platform. We are obsessed with quality and compliance, and we believe that with the proper tooling and platform, you can have trusted, transparent, and precise data even when it's web data. Delivery layer is, they're going to show us their interface and talk through the value that they add. Mostly they are everything that Sequentum doesn't do when you're taking your data business to market. And of course, Snowflake is the foundation of it all, the mechanism for sharing data simply and seamlessly, as we will show you. All right, so our objectives today are to go through, of course, what Sequentum, Delivery Layer, and Snowflake have. We're going to give you a little bit of a demo of the combined product and a little bit of each of our products, and you'll be able to sign up and meet with us after the webinar individually. All right, so Sequentum. So Sequentum, many of you may already know, we do industrial scale web scraping. We've been around in this business since 2008. Our core technology platform is just incredibly powerful scraping. We have on-prem components, we have cloud components, and then of course we have data as a service. That we have a center of excellence in India for helping our enterprise customers get set up on these platforms. And now, in the year of 2025, and actually dating all the way back to 2023, we also run intelligent agents on our platform. You may have heard of those, slightly trendy, but yes, very, very powerful. We wrap around the LLMs and every other AI service out there. Now, in our platform, we have a custom browser. We have very, very powerful anti-bot defenses. We have, unlike a lot of the newer web scraping platforms that seem to be coming out every day, we have really atomic customizability and an interface that's been iterated on for the past 17 years. So if there's something that that you need to do that's custom to pull data just the way that you need it, it's highly unlikely that you won't be able to do exactly that on our platform, because that's really how we architected it. We include robust process automation, which allows you to do very, very powerful data quality, error detection and handling. We call them agents. We've been calling them agents since 2008.
You're ahead of curve.
Right, yeah. I mean, even before we were putting AI in them, we were calling them agents. But every agent can just be, can have its API, enabled with an API key. So basically it's very easy to drop it into your complete data operation, with your inputs and outputs. And then of course I mentioned anti-bot, but we also handle CAPTCHAs. And we have this philosophy of, all the best practices that come with automation, reusable building blocks, right? So we have template commands, we have template agents, we have, everything is encapsulated in these point and click, templated, reusable components, modularized, composable interface. And then we have all the audit trails and the governance that you need. We're SOC 2 audit accredited, all the things that you need when you're dealing with web data. I think we have over 40, not quite 50, but somewhere in there, number of lawsuits right now, big, high-profile lawsuits in the world of web data collection and using data to train AI. I've been very active in standards groups. I brought the Sequentum operating guidelines to the Alt Data Council, which is a group under the Financial Information Standards Division of SIA, which is a nonprofit standards group. And we published the Web Data Collection Considerations, which pretty much aligned the finance industry on sort of how to deal with web data in a compliant way to really mitigate the risks that go along with the type of lawsuits that might show up, right? Obviously, web scraping is legal, right? Google is founded on web scraping, right? But there's, it's the way that you do the web scraping that either puts you in hot water or doesn't. So we've architected our platform to make sure we have all the right controls and audit logs and access permissions, et cetera, to keep you out of trouble. And we've also published standards on how to best operate your data collection operation to make sure you don't get into trouble. And so that was in the finance industry. I worked, probably for a year and a half, starting back in 2018 with the heads of compliance of, pretty much all the major SEC governed institutions. Some of them are happy to be named, some of them not. So I think I can name, Two Sigma and PDT Partners. I'm not sure if I can name all the others, but the calls tend to have like 60 or 70 people on them. It's very, very active. We have all the law firms in there, the large law firms and the small boutique law firms. We have a lot of my competitors I invited in. So we have good representation from the data vendors. And more recently, I teamed up with OpenAI and Common Crawl in the Alliance for Responsible Data Collection, and Bright Data, another competitor, to basically define data collection standards. And we're not just defining the standards for how to collect the data, but how to document the way it was collected. And we're extending the Croissant dataset documentation standard to encapsulate all of that good thinking. And we think it's really going to help. And of course, it'll all be baked into the platform when it's fully defined. So let's talk about web data for a minute, right? Web data is unbelievably powerful, right? I think about 40% of all alternative data is web data. And you can use this for data-driven decision-making, whether it's algorithmic trading or whether it's, really just looking at macroeconomic trends like grocery prices, the price of a banana, in cities, across the globe, right? You can pull all of that with web scraping and really come up with some very keen insights. But it's very hard to do because the websites don't want to be scraped, and the sites change, and they don't, come and knock on our door and say we're going to update our website. Get ready. Right. And plus the client who's doing the research, their requirements are changing. There's hundreds of millions of dollars being invested into bot blocking technologies, right? That's pretty deep tech stuff. And, so we have to keep up with that and make sure we always appear as a human and not a bot. We route a lot of our proxies, a lot of our network requests we make through what's called proxies. Right? Like for the price of a banana, for example, if we're trying to get the price in Melbourne, we need to use an IP address from Australia, from Melbourne. And so, these proxy vendors, they have outages, everything is going down all the time, right? We're pulling from multimodal data sources. There's audio streams, text documents, databases, APIs, video, and there's all kinds of different data types that we're pulling from. The actual technical protocols that they're being streamed in are changing. And of course, your lawyers are changing their mind about how exactly they want you to be pulling this data, right? So everything is changing all the time. And so that makes web data uniquely challenging, right, in the world of data, which already has quality problems, right? So what do we do at Sequentum to deal with this? Multi-structured, rapidly changing, technically complex data. Like what are we actually doing, right? And I think I did like an hour-long webinar on this with the Shift Left conference not too long ago. So you can look that up if you want to get really into the weeds. But in a nutshell, right, you need to combine the methodology with a platform that makes the manageability really easy, right? So it's got to be composable, right? Reusable building blocks that are all hardened and bulletproofed, right? So you're not reinventing the wheel all the time. And then you want to have that transparency so that everyone, all the stakeholders can see exactly what's happening, right? You want to break down the silos between teams, right? Data engineers talk about how they're burnt out and they're blamed for everything. It's such a thankless job, right? Because everything's always going wrong. And but the truth is that the if the yield, the algorithm, engineers could see how much great work the data engineers were doing to make sure that those errors were stamped out before they could happen, right? That's a totally different team, right? So you have the research managers, the analysts, the ops managers, everybody's got their own view in our platform. And they have different permissions that go with it, right? What they're able to edit and what they're able to view. They can see the full documentation of the agent. Everything's, self-documenting, and I'll show you that. And then there's very, very crystal clear audit logs where you can literally see every change that's happened, who made what change when, right? And the last thing is people are empowered. If you want to give that data engineer the power to go in there, download that version of the agent, point, click, fix, and deploy, because the websites, they're going to change, right? What do we have? Mother's Day coming up next, right? There's going to be window dressing, something's going to change. And, so there's going to have to be some little tiny tweak, right? You empower people with fantastic audit logs to drive accountability so that everyone can see what's happening, right? And this is how we manage, change at scale. So that's sort of the whole philosophy behind Sequentum and our platform is you employ people, process, and tools together to do change management at scale. That's how you manage web data. That's how you manage quality. That's how you manage compliance. And that's how you really scale up. So I think we have like about 70,000 agents that we have live for our clients now. And there's more and more all the time, right? So I mentioned a bunch of things with our core scraping technology, right? It's easy to set up and use it. There's nothing to set up, basically. If you want to get data, you just, go to Sequentum Cloud, log in, and you point and click and create your agent, right? If you have trouble figuring something out, you chat to our team and they can help you. This really reduces your labor costs. It reduces, your upfront investment in figuring out like what open source tools, what version, how do I integrate everything? You don't have to do any of that. Your lawyers are going to be really happy with the operating guidelines and how they're all technically enforced and governed in the platform. And then, of course, if you have trouble and you want to engage us, engage our Center of Excellence in India to stand up 100 or 200 or 10,000, sites, we can help you with that. And you're getting a partner that really knows how to do industrial scale. So I went through a lot of these details already. I'm going to show you a quick little demo. I don't have a ton of time, so I'm just going to show you very, very briefly, since the content of this, can't seem to make this go away. There we go. Since the content of this webinar is focused, we've used Carvana data, right? Carvana data is really, really nice because it actually, here, I'm showing you our editor right now, and I'm basically just going to show you a little preview. It's not going to be the best demo, but basically, this is it in a nutshell. You can see all the commands at the left. It's loading up the website. We can load a full page browser, and then we can go to JSON parser, which is a much lower footprint on the website and on your servers. We can do all of this and iterate through and start gathering all your data. I'm going to stop this. I'm not going to, but here's some sample data that we collected already. I've put in as inputs Tesla Cybertruck only, so that's the data you're getting. Some of the other things I want to show you are, you've got your schema built in. Hang on a minute. I gotta back up here. So you've got your schema, and you can set all kinds of rules on your schema, right? For example, if it's a date or anything like that, I can configure a bunch of information there. I can say never allow it to be empty, et cetera, et cetera. I can configure all these rules. I can configure change tracking, deduplication, etc. And then, oh, I exited a little too soon, but anyway, I'm running out of time. But then, and here's the agent, it's auto documented. And when you go into the runs, you can go and see, what it's downloaded and the logs and everything like that. So I'm going to go back to the slides. And yeah, I'm going to hand it over to Solomon. If anyone has any questions, please wait till the end of the webinar and we'll have time to answer all your questions.
Cool, awesome, and thank you, Sarah. And it's super cool to see industrial scale scraping and all of what you're doing in Sequentum. And there's just so much opportunity now, I think, for companies to do more with web data than they ever have in the history of the data industry. Like, web data is way more important for customer-facing applications like we're going to go through, but also just in general. So hopefully that's been really interesting for everybody.
And Carvana in particular, I should say, is very interesting because you can actually take that data and compare it to the 10Ks and the number of cars that they sold, and it tracks. So you can actually see, if you are doing change tracking, right, you can actually see over time how Carvana, the company, is doing before earnings.
Yeah, and I mean, there's got to be so much even for the manufacturers or the parts manufacturers who are looking at used car inventories. How do you get a sense of potential demand of what's coming up? And so there's just so much that you can see here, which we'll go through as when we go through the demo of the application. You'll see all of that. So I'm just going to talk a bit about delivery layer before passing it over to Brian, where he can share sort of how Snowflake fits into this, because this whole webinar, this whole demo is really, really, I think, amazing, because I grew up in a data world where doing all of this stuff was years and millions of dollars and multiple dev teams and just so complicated to do what we've managed to stitch together here, which is we take data from the internet, we are able to store it integrated, getting into a database that's going to be able to power a customer-facing application, and then get something that customers can log into and see insights and dashboards and get data and APIs that is permissioned and account managed and has everything that you need. And so here we'll go through a little bit about delivery layer and sort of the role delivery layer plays in the sort of combination of these three. So the big idea behind delivery layer is that actually some of the most valuable data that's in your company is the data that's leaving your company. And it's a little bit of a mind shift, but if you think about it, like, your company has tons of data. Some of it you're going to use, some of it you're not going to use. But every single piece of information that's leaving your company, it needs to leave your company. It's not some sort of nice to have. There's either some customer thing that needs to get done, some regulatory thing that needs to get done. It's your product. It's really important. And the idea behind delivery layer is that data is not very supported, and the tools and the capabilities to manage and govern securely that data that is leaving your company and treat it as a first-class citizen is kind of missing. And so that's sort of where delivery layer comes in, and just a couple of areas around what kind of data that sort of drives revenue. Where does data drive revenue, right? Most of the tools and data are built to support internal decision making, but what about external? So in some cases, this is your product, right? There's many big data companies. You've got your Nielsen's, where I worked for a while. You've got TransUnion's, S&P. You can see consulting projects as data products in many ways, right? You're delivering insights, you're delivering some sort of analysis. Maybe that one-time PowerPoint deck is actually something that you would want to have as an ongoing application, both for better insights, but also you could probably charge money for it if you're a consulting company and you sort of have a reason to keep things ongoing. Partner reporting, supply chain, affiliate, regulatory. So much of the value of what's inside your company, your customers or your partners, if they knew what you knew, you would be able to be more successful together. But how do you get that data to them? And then lastly is customer reporting, right? So many companies nowadays need customer success reports, or big enterprises want to better understand how they're using their tools or getting value out of your company. And frankly, some of the biggest ones need things a little custom, right? 80% of your customers are the same, but Walmart and Amazon, they need something totally different. They don't want to see the same things that the other one sees, and they need to see things differently. So how do you manage that? How do you navigate that? So when you're in that space, there's generally two directions that you could go, which is number one, you try to sort of repurpose internal tools for this external use case, whether it's sort of an embedded BI functionality, whether it's sort of an admin template, whether it's an iPaaS that you're trying to use to enable data sharing. These tools were not meant for this use case. They weren't built specifically for this use case. They have some levels of functionality to support it, and then you kind of have to build the rest and duct tape a system together. And then in some cases, you already know that's not going to work. And so you end up building a dev team that does this custom. And we all know what that looks like, is that it takes 2 years plus at most big companies to get that done. And so hold on, yikes. Both of these options have major challenges. I'm not going to go through all of these. You can pause the recording at one point if you want to see it. But it's a classic build versus buy situation. And in this case, because of the nature of a lot of these applications, you get a lot more challenges, both in terms of how much you're willing and capable to invest to get the level of features that you'd like, as well as you've got a lot of key person risk and scope creep. And there's a lot of things here that sometimes these applications seem small, like they're not that big of a deal to build. But then once you start getting towards launch, the customers are like, oh, actually, all of these completely reasonable features that we are expecting, we expect them. And they're your customers, and you sometimes have to build them. So that's it. So that's where delivery layer comes in. Delivery layer is built for the type of data that drives revenue. And in this case, for the demo, we built this really cool customer-facing insights application off of this Carvana data that Sequentum had sourced. And so it's really built for external data commercialization. It's totally white labeled. The idea is that it's just your product. Nobody knows the delivery layer exists besides for you. They're just using it, and they're using it to log into their reporting application or insights application. And one of the most important things that delivery layer does is actually improves speed to market, time to market for a lot of these. People don't understand how much, and Sarah, I'm sure you see this from Sequentum too. Like, if you could get something in 2 weeks versus a year or a year and a half, commercially, you never get that revenue back. People think that the amount that they save is like the amount that it costs to develop in a short period of time. It's like, no, the amount you save is the revenue that you're never getting back from that time you didn't have a product. Anyways, so improves time to market. It's just custom built for this use case. So all of the countless product decisions that would otherwise be made for internal use cases, or a new group of developers coming together to build this thing for the first time. This is just what delivery layer does.
Should we mention how easy it is? Here we go.
And we're going
Snowflake,
and exactly. So and then now, and this is where Snowflake comes in. So delivery layer is built to be able to run applications off various different data sources. And so we can connect to databases, connect to data warehouses. And in this case,
and we can deliver anywhere. So when we decided to do a webinar together, I was like, do you support Snowflake? Because that's the easiest. And he was like, I do. I do. 5 minutes later, he had all our data and was starting to point and click in his system to work out the graphs.
And it was super, super easy. And frankly, as I'm sure most of the people watching this webinar know, data integration is not known to be super easy and painless as just a thing.
We could write it all to an S3 bucket. It might take overnight to get it all there. And a simple little share.
Exactly. And then you're going to have to somehow put some flag for when you next update it, and it doesn't stay in sync. And it's It's
Snowflake, so our stuff is point and click, yours is point and click.
that Snowflake is playing here.
Yeah.
All right, so hi folks. My name is Brian Hess. I'm in the field CTO office at Snowflake, and I focus primarily on applications. Applications is sort of runs the gamut from data engineering to the data integration to serving the data, et cetera. So a lot of times our conversations tend to go all over the place, but really it's around pulling all these pieces together. So if you can move to the next slide. There are a few things that we might talk about that get a little bit into the futures, and so this is just sort of the safe harbor statement of classic sort of disclaimer here, but move to the next slide. Great. So one of the challenges that we see with modern applications is that pulling all the pieces together is a bit of a challenge. It causes a lot of trouble to be able to assemble the pieces in a way that really support delivering applications that depend on a lot of data out to market. We think, as we think about the sort of three-tiered web app or an application layer stack, the data layer is really the most difficult to operate, to scale, and to operate at scale. And so that's really the space that we are sort of dialing in on. If you move to the next slide. There's sort of three main sort of challenges that we see. I mean, and this is just three of many, but that complexity that happens at that data layer really does bubble up into complexities in the middle tier and in the front end, and the entire architecture starts to get complicated. And the complicatedness really limits the kind of innovation that you can do in the experimentation in the early parts of a product lifecycle, and then moving into how you're actually delivering that once you do, come up with a good idea and you want to bring it to market. It becomes a challenge also to incorporate new capabilities like the AI stuff that people really can't stop talking about, and is definitely really interesting. But really, the way of pulling that into pointing that at your data, it's also a challenge if the data is not in a simple, flexible format. As it goes out into a product, the challenge comes around how do you give a good user experience? How do you give good SLAs? How do I scale as my customers grow and I get more customers? Or even just the fluctuations that happen during a day of people being online and doing an active and then also going home and relaxing as well. And all of this translates then, if we think about this from the business standpoint, it translates into slow growth, right? The product growth and the expansion of our product and our revenue, it all impacts that at the end as well. So we move to the next slide. So Snowflake takes a look at this and kind of approaches to deliver a platform where we can build these applications. The core part of it is really the analytics. So what queries and functionality are you trying to do with your data? What are you trying to learn of it? I sometimes tongue-in-cheek just sort of say, I want to do stuff with data. That's sort of this analytics bucket. What we then want to add to it, Snowflake has been investing, like a lot of our peers as well, is around how do we bring AI into the picture? That AI could be pointing the AI at the data that you have in Snowflake. It could be helping a developer build out their new applications more simply and quickly, but also deliver those AI capabilities directly to end customers as well. Can't really do anything with data unless you actually have the data in the first place. And that's really where the data engineering part comes in. I think of that in sort of two parts. One is the data acquisition, how I get data in from the ether. And the next is how do I put it into a form that's actually useful to someone. And then lastly, we talked about sort of applications and collaboration. How do I build the applications and deliver them? But also, how do I collaborate with my partners and data they might have, customers and the data they might have, or how do I even deliver things out? I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. Snowflake wraps that all in managed service, right? So we want to give this something where you're not dealing and thinking about what I usually call the janitorial tasks of just the stuff that's not really the business value parts, and you can focus on what your customers are looking for. And then, of course, we need this in a secure and governed way. Want to make sure that this really powerful data is not somehow at risk. You move to the next slide. So sort of three ways that we sort of break this down. The first one is really thinking about having a toolbox that has all these pieces that you need to build integrated in there already for you to use. Having that sort of without having to have to compile these tools from across the ecosystem, but rather having them there and integrated together, we really can build faster. We can iterate. In the early parts of the development cycle, we might not be on the right path, and we want to find that out quickly and adjust and then iterate until we have the thing that really is what we want to deliver to folks. But then as we move into production, we want to be building on a framework that has tools that all really build together. And then, as I'm saying, sort of like integrate and go into production, we want to assemble this and bring it out and easily integrate with the rest of the ecosystem. So talked about the middle tier and the front end. We've done a lot of investments in how you can connect various things to talk to Snowflake to leverage that data engine and put things in front of customers. And then lastly, we talk about how are we going to scale? And I alluded to this already. We're going to want to scale with new customers that come on board and not have to think heavily about how are we going to handle the fact that we've onboarded, twice as many customers this month as last month, or deal with the fluctuations during the day of, people being busy and people being quiet. We want to give a predictable and enjoyable experience to folks. Move to the next slide. So I'm not going to talk through all the pieces. It's sort of just kind of indicating that we've got this, tool set, this stack of tools to apply to the problems. On the left at the bottom, we sort of are talking about that data acquisition part. How are we going to acquire data from the ether and bring it in? How are we going to manage that data? There's a lot of things, and again, I'll talk a little bit more about on the next slide about sort of how that we look at that, and some of the stuff that we've been talking about today can really simplify that part of it. But there are definitely options from you've got to do more of the work because you get a raw or access to data to you can kind of get going right from the way that it shows up to you. I mentioned the analytical bucket earlier. It's really kind of SQL and the SQL plus stuff that we've been doing and expanding things like geospatial and advanced analytics. AI and ML is all over the place, and we actually think about that in various places. They help the developer. There are ways for data scientists to do their stuff that can then translate into stuff we put on top of this data, et cetera. We've got a lot of the user experiences. And then, of course, these boxes on the right are really around how can you take your functionality, your data, your components, and bring them into the platform and the extensibility of this platform. Go to the next slide. So I did want to talk a little bit about the sort of data sharing that we've been talking a little bit today already about. I look at kind of the data sharing part in sort of two phases. The first one is if I'm building something, how can I get data in and shared to me that I can then build and incorporate? That might be third-party data that I want to build on top of. It could also be my customer's data. The secure data sharing capability in Snowflake is if that data is already in Snowflake, it's already in a table, it's already usable in that format. When we do the data sharing, it'll show up in that other person's Snowflake account as a table ready to use. So as opposed to having to do, I think Sarah sort of alluded to this, right? You could take an extract, you could write it out to CSV, and then it's somebody else's, homework assignment to bring that in, do the data validation, make sure that we've parsed it correctly. And I always think it was a moment ago in a useful form in that Snowflake account over there. Why do I have to go through all of that? And that's sort of the way Snowflake approaches this of, well, we can make that visible in your account, ready to go already. So you're jumping, that data engineering task sometimes can go to zero or very lightweight things on top of it to incorporate that data into whatever else you might be doing. Then we talk about the flip side, which is I can share that data out with partners. I can share that data out with customers. We see some of our customers give an offer to their customers. Hey, I can share you with this data that I've curated for a premium. So it could also be a revenue stream there as well. And we also see some of our customers turn into data providers, right? So that they have understanding at the industry, and that becomes then something they can turn around and do. And now you're on the other side of I can provide you data that you can easily incorporate into that space. But this data sharing, I do think is somewhat unique in the way Snowflake gives it as when you receive a data share, it's already in that usable form. There's not really a bunch of work to do to get going. And I think that's some of, what we've been talking about, Sarah and Solomon have been talking about today, about sort of jump starting that fits very nicely into, now let's get to the good stuff and not deal with, the janitorial tasks of curating this, getting this data in a usable form. So with that, Solomon, I'll hand it back over to you.
All right, thank you so much. And yeah, that was great. And I think that framing of it with the janitorial task was really great, because frankly, between the data coming from Sequentum and what delivery layer needs, it is a little janitorial. You have the data, we want the data. Why does it need to be complicated and messy in the middle? It doesn't need to be. So here we're gonna go through some of the like ICP use case stuff for this particular demo, and then we're gonna jump in and actually see what we built. So high level, so the idea for this application that we built as sort of a demo application is sort of the automotive industry, right? So you could imagine you're a research analyst, whether you're in the finance where you're making investments based on this decision. Maybe you are in the industry and you are doing research and development. You're trying to understand the market better. You're trying to get a benchmark sense of various different automakers and what's happening. And you're looking to identify market trends and opportunities. And so how can you take data that's on the internet and or maybe you're starting a business on it, right? Maybe you have a market intelligence business and you say, I want to launch an auto sector product.
Yeah, maybe you're Bezos and you're launching a competitor to the Cybertruck, and you want to see, what markets love the Cybertruck and which don't.
You've got so many reasons to wanna see this, and so get the data, and then you visualize and offer the data, and it all connects together through Snowflake. So if we go to the next slide here. Okay. All right. So this is it. Now, so here's the demo. So we're going to go in and we're going to show you. All right, everybody. So, and we didn't do the login, but this is our Auto Insights application that we built on delivery layer between Sequentum's sourcing of the data, Snowflake's delivering of that data to delivery layer, and then delivery layer delivering it to you in this application. So here you go. So we've got a couple pages that we put together. Firstly, we're just looking at marketplace trends overall. How many used cars have been sold on the platform over time, right? We can look at average price and marketplace volume. You can see that the average price for used cars has been going up pretty substantially. You see what you would have expected to see around the pandemic time when used cars sales went up a lot. It seems that they dropped and now they're kind of back up a little bit more. So who knows what's going to happen? You can see marketplace volume if you were from the financial services side of things, and you can just look at cars sold per brand. You can see that Ford is leading the way, but Chevy is just behind them. And this is just general history, right? But history isn't always enough. Maybe you want to look at a specific, for the industry, you want to look at a specific automaker. So here we've got all the different automakers that you can look through, and we've got a lot of them here. So let's keep with Ford. And by the way, all of this powered by data sourced by Sequentum, and it's just connecting to Snowflake, and Snowflake is running these analytical queries on the back end. You've got
updated each day,
and it gets updated as frequently as you update it. Exactly. So you've got your yearly sales. You can see average price for Ford. You can see a model breakdown. It looks like the Escape is for the last, I think this is 14 years of data. So the Escape is the #1 seller. You can look at the Edge. But maybe you don't want to just look at, and hold on, here's Ford. Maybe we look at Mercedes and we see what Mercedes is up to. And there you go. We got the data pulled in. You can see that, similar trends around sales. And look at this. What's actually really interesting is I didn't realize how much the price of used Mercedes has gone up over time. If you look at, back in the sort of mid 2010s, you had used cars at the sort of like 25K price range on average for Mercedes, whereas now they've gone up, above 40. So anyways, this is just interesting information to see. You can see the model breakdown, and then we put sort of a yearly automaker overview as well. So you can, if you want to really dive into per year, what specific models of cars are being sold, you can see it here. So, maybe at one point the Escape was #1 for Ford, but if you look at, 2020, the Edge took the edge, and then let's go up to 2024, and then we can see what the latest year data is. And the Edge is still got the edge. Anyways, so this is
right, and you can also write any custom query, right?
Oh yeah,
we can come up with custom dashboards on the fly if we were brave enough to run our demo that way.
100%. So and there's a couple other things here. So you anything that you see, whether it's in a chart or a data table, you could download the data to a CSV because everybody wants that. Let's be honest with ourselves. And then one other cool thing about delivery layer is that there's this idea that when people get data, if your customers need data, some people will want it visually and some people will want it programmatically. And if you have 100 customers, you can't control who wants it programmatically or not. This is a huge pain point for many people building these customer-facing analytics applications. Delivery layer just
in the same customer, you've got different users.
Oh, 100%. Your executives want to see the charts, and the data team needs the raw data. And I can't tell you how many companies have a separate team that handles the API versus the front end, and then needs a third team to focus on permissions synchronization between the two. By the way, there's a lot of permissions behind the scenes here that are not necessarily relevant for this demo, but if you had Ford and Chevy that were needing to log in, and Ford would only ever see Ford's data, and Chevrolet would only ever see Chevrolet's data, that is one of the biggest use cases here. And then,
or if we sold only a slice of the data to a customer, the data is going to this customer, that's all they would say.
Exactly. And it's all like fully delivery layer, truthfully, is more of a permission system with charts and graphs on top than a charts and graph system with assorted permissions. And then on the back end, if you look, if you want to go into the back end of delivery layer, which is right here, really what's happening is we are connecting to the delivery layer Snowflake Sequentum share. We are running templated queries against those that data set, and then we are pulling those queries into the drag and drop interface where you can build your applications connected to the query, and it makes it
composable over here.
It makes it super easy. So that is high level what's happening in this demo application. And again, I think because I've spent so much of my career building all of these capabilities from scratch, from the data sourcing to the janitorial data integrations to the front ends. And the fact that we could just have the three of our companies work together to build something like this, and this did not take very long to build for either of us. It was like, get the Carvana data, connect it via Snowflake share, spin up a couple of charts and graphs with some SQL queries. It was not that much time to build this, but this can scale out, and you can on delivery layer, even if you have a big hedge fund that wants to look at data a specific way,
you just want to do a side hustle, all you data people.
Oh yeah, you can like
write a little data business on the side.
Exactly. So right now we've got this this car industry one, but if you needed to build something custom that was like its own visualization for another customer, you could do that super easily as well. And with the Sequentum data as well, if you wanted to take the Carvana data and you say, oh, we need some other data source that combined with this Carvana data, suddenly it becomes so much more valuable. Setting that up is so easy. So anyways, I think it's really cool what we've built together. So yeah. And I think with that, do we have any questions. I think we're open to questions. So questions to Sequentum, delivery layer, Snowflake, open invitation. I'm going to stop sharing over here. Yeah.
Let's see. How do each of you use AI? So this is such a great question. I mean, this is obviously everyone's always talking about AI these days. So from the Sequentum point of view, we basically wrap AI. We create command templates and agent templates, and we wrap the AI to bring in all of those AI capabilities. And we were actually doing this long before ChatGPT was released, right? We would do language translation or keyword extraction or whatever it was. There were a lot of great AI services out there that we could wrap around before ChatGPT. But once we got the LLMs, that's when we really started actually going production with intelligent agents. So we have, if you go to our website, you can see risk alerts. There's actually a lot more intelligent agents we're running for our customers. We're so easy to build that we're not sure about them all. We're not necessarily promoting them all, but we have been live in production with intelligent agents since Q1 of 2023, where they're running autonomously and adding terrific value for our customers. And every new capability that's coming out, we can make use of it. So it's kind of amazing. And in the world of scraping, AI is playing a big role in sort of automatically doing things like self-healing and whatnot. We're not super happy with the reliability and the way that that's working just yet, but we do have it in test, and we do intend to release it pretty soon. So lots of AI happening at Sequentum.
I'll say a quick thing about sort of Snowflake. So Snowflake's done a fair amount with AI as a building block, right? That platform. I touched on it very briefly. We're hosting a whole number of large language models. There's some capability that we've got relating to document understanding. So like basically handing in PDFs and we're able to not just sort of do the character recognition, but actually trying to do some of the document understanding. The ways that we see people sort of interacting with that, there are ways to sort of just do your traditional complete kind of statements where you send a prompt, you get a response. But really marrying that with the data where you can, some of the capabilities around, there's a semantic model about the data that's there. This ID column is actually a customer ID versus, and therefore this other column over here that's called customer ID in that other table, you could actually join those. So you can hand in a semantic model and then also ask a question, and it will then turn around and say, well, this is the SQL that would actually handle that particular question. The way that we sort of think about using that tool is one way would be let's help the data, the engineer build things so that they can understand, hey, well, what would be the right question? And I want to put this on the screen. How can I help? And that helps with that cycle. But we definitely do also see folks want to say, talk to your data. And so then the application would allow for someone to type in or speak in a question, and then it'll sort of generate a SQL statement. Then we can go execute that SQL statement on their behalf. We can then, of course, put the access security so they're only seeing their data if it's a multi-tenant sort of situation. This space of sort of the Cortex Analyst is that text to SQL. We have a search capability that's sort of the semantic search that helps for RAG type use cases. And then we've got this Cortex Agents, which is sort of putting those pieces together. So I would say that we're iterating along with the industry and sort of tapping into those spaces and trying to provide those building blocks. Then we've got some customers doing early things with them. I think we're definitely in the early adopter, maybe treading into early majority parts of that curve. But our customers are keeping us on our toes, and we're sort of trying to stay at least a step ahead of folks, but collaborating with a lot of our customers and partners as well.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you could do your own hour, 2 hours worth of how Snowflake is using AI and how Snowflake customers are helping Snowflake with AI. On the delivery layer side, I think the most exciting way that we're connecting with AI is actually how we're helping our customers, like help their customers with AI, right? Because one of the most important things that you need for AI is the right pieces of data in order to actually do things with it. And a lot of times that data lives in other places. It lives inside of a company. Like imagine you wanted to, you had an AI marketing agent that wanted to put together custom research that was based on parts of the data that you have as a company, but you wanted to pull in other information. Like you wanted to pull in Carvana trends, but whatever it is, right? A big part of that, the ability of the AI to do something useful is being able to access that useful data that sometimes might be in some other place. And so for delivery layer, really a big part of it is if you want to enable AI in your ecosystem where people can use your data in a governed, secure way that they're paying for, et cetera, that's really how delivery layer is thinking, how do we use and enable what's going on with AI?
I will also say for the customers that come to us with sort of requests of our Center of Excellence team, more consulting style requests, we use AI a lot. So we basically, in what used to be, they would pay us a research fee to look into what their goals were and see how we could achieve them. We can now, in the span of a 1-hour call with some queries back and forth at ChatGPT, come up with data sources, schemas, how we're going to normalize the schema across sites, generally how we're going to, help them with generating their insights and getting, the right structure to the data so they can analyze it. And by the end of a call, we've got actionable requirements with the help of AI. So that's really helping us. And of course, our teams are using Cursor AI.
I think we're all using all the personal tools, right? Yeah. Everybody is.
All the productivity tools. Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right, hold on. I'm pulling up the chat here.
Can the dashboard visualization be shared as a public link or embedded in another web app as an iframe?
All right, great question. Delivery layer specific. Can be embedded in another app. Right now, not built for public direct on delivery layer, but yes, can be embedded in other applications, which theoretically can be public. So you sort of can back into that. So I guess the answer is yes.
Yeah, that's definitely delivery layer specific. We don't make any data public. That's actually part of our operating guidelines. Even if it's collected in bulk, we just won't make it public, even though it starts as public data, because we can't control the end use case. And yeah, we're sort of driving accountability and responsibility every step of the way that way.
Yeah, I mean, as much as this whole webinar is about making data public, really it's about making most data private and the right data public in a very specific governed way. And that I think goes for Sequentum, Snowflake, delivery layer. Most data people is really about data privacy and keeping data safe versus getting data out there to everyone, just to the people that you need.
Right, because data is powerful and you want to use it to make the right decisions in the right way and not use it in the wrong way. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, right. Okay. What makes Sequentum data better than other data? Oh, thank you. This is like I mean, I'm not actively evaluating everyone else's data. I just know that even from before going into the scraping industry, right, I was a quality assurance professional, and we do everything in the platform that you would want from a quality assurance point of view. We set up all the acceptance criteria, what determines good data, right? Not just sort of general stats like how many rows do I expect and how many errors, are okay to get. But for each field, you can set up tremendously powerful, data validation rules. And you can do, from a simple point and click interface, you can define, the strict data type, value ranges, syntax format, all these kinds of things. But you can also, have custom rules. So you can create custom buckets. You can, like if you're collecting car data, right, you can say, well, there's 85 Hondas on the site today, and by the end Hondas set up custom buckets, and basically what that does is it gives you the power to customize your data quality rules to the specific data set, right? We're really, really interested in that decentralized treatment of each data set as a unique set of requirements. And you can have very, very customized rules, hundreds of them, right? To make sure that the data coming across is what you need and not what you don't need. Right? Because with web data, oh my Lord, you can get a lot of, that's part of bot blocking, right? Like one of the bot blocking services has released a capability of generating garbage data, right? Right. So there's a lot that goes into crafting your quality monitoring rules on the Sequentum platform. There's a lot of it. So you only, you get out of it what you put into it, but we have all the bells and whistles built in, right? We are not convinced that an external data observability platform makes sense in our field, right? Where you're dealing with websites that are, fighting you, right? They have bot blocking turned on, right? We don't think that an external tool is going to help, right? At the time you finish your job and then you run an external tool and it says, hey, you got a problem. Like, it's too late. You don't want to rerun that job again. It's compute intensive, it's expensive. Right? You want it right there at the moment you're extracting and at the moment that you're exporting, after you've done any sort of extra process automation to structure and enrich your content. So I think with that design philosophy and architecture philosophy and the way that we think about, web data extraction and processing and handling, I think that net comes up with really high quality data. How do we get started?
There you go.
Yeah. Well, you just go to sequentum.com and you log into the cloud and you sign up for your free trial. You'll get some credits automatically and you'll be able to start writing and running agents. The chat will be available to you to help. People eager to share the wealth of agents that we already have running in the cloud.
Yeah, delivery, and I'm sure all of our companies are easily accessible. Delivery layer, you can go to the website, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Solomon Kahn, and we're out and about. Snowflake, Brian, I don't know if there's a specific recommendation for how people should reach out. I'm sure everybody knows Snowflake. Also, you're not hard to find. Big publicly traded company.
Yeah, there's a lot of out there. There's sort of a lot of quick starts in terms of getting started at a, if you need to kind of walk through some stuff at quickstarts.snowflake.com. But there is a lot of content out there, sort of, I would say, some Googles and Medium articles that drag you into, sort of specific topics for sure. If you are already a Snowflake customer, talking with your account team is always a recommended approach. They'll definitely help you, think about what you're trying to do and make some suggestions about how to move from there.
Yeah, and from my experience on the other side, having been a Snowflake customer for a while, you've got good people and resources internally that can help anyone. This is just sort of from the customer perspective. So
great. You can reach me on LinkedIn too.
Yeah.
Sarah McKenna.
Cool.
Great. Well, thank you all for attending this webinar. Thank you, Solomon, and thank you, Brian. Really appreciate your time today. Any follow-up questions, don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll probably be doing another one of these at some point in the future.
Hopefully. And all right, take care, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye.